My name is Jason.
My name is Tom.
And this is Fear of a Black Dragon, an old school RPG podcast.
And in this episode, perhaps not everything will be to the adventurer's liking in the ominous crypt of the Blood Moss.
Our first segment is the basic crawl.
Ominous Crypt of the Blood Moss is a 49-page adventure by Frederick Folds, created for Old School Essentials and other OSR-style games. We don't know who else, if anyone, worked on the game, as there are no credits. From the text. They say Ursodiol the Mad was the greatest mind to have ever breached the great cosmic void, that he looked beyond the myriad stars and the blackest depths of the hells, into the swirling, magical protoplasmic morass that is the beginning and end of everything. When they found his corpse, so hideously changed was it that it drove those who saw it to madness and despair. Fearful, they entombed him in the crypt of his forebears and sealed it tight. But little did they know that Ursodiol brought back something with him from his cosmic journey, and it is hungry. Ominous Crypt of the Blood Moss is a short dungeon crawl adventure. It revolves around a foolish wizard who recently journeyed where he should not have, and ultimately met his end in a horrible fashion. Unfortunately, he brought back a cosmic hitchhiker with him, the Blood Moss, which is now spreading in search of the mortal experiences it hungers for.
The book begins with the introduction Tom just read, plus some notes about character level and how to use the adventure. From there, we get some background info about Ursodiol, the Crypt of Gavain, which is our main adventuring site, the cosmic void from where the blood moss of the title hails, strange omens the characters can discover, and notes about a mysterious plague. The short of it is this: the mad wizard accidentally brought this malevolent moss with him from the cosmic void. The blood moss was trapped in this nearby crypt for a time, but flooding from torrential rains dislodged it from the crypt, and it is now spreading throughout the village and the surrounding area, turning victims into blood moss zombies. The next section discusses the blood moss in more detail, the various ways it can attack, and some stat blocks. Then we have some adventuring hooks. Then comes the village, which is not a specific place, but rather the GM is given some options for names and details. I went with the logging village of Pineacre when I ran it. The village section also comes with some NPC details, plus a terrific set piece involving a funerary pyre and some flaming blood moss zombies. The bulk of the remainder of the book is the dungeon crawl in the Crypt of Gavain the White. There are 10 keyed locations. Some highlights are the entryway, which includes a fun little secret door puzzle, the defleshing chamber, where bodies are cleaned of their meat before being interred, and which includes the solution to stopping the blood moss, the Hall of Remembrance, which features statues of Gavain's descendants, and the Treasure Vault, which my players are learning for the first time right now that they accidentally skipped over, leaving behind the bulk of the treasure available in this dungeon. Finally, the book ends with an epilogue section and some details about magic items that can be found in the adventure. Let's talk about our bona fides, Tom.
I have merely read it. Jason, what about you?
I played it as part of my West Marches style trophy campaign, The Company of Salt and Iron. More on that later. Things we liked about Ominous Crypt of the Blood Moss. I always like to start with the presentational and art, graphic design type things. I think the art in this is fine. It's nothing to write home about. But some individual pieces are nice, like the Hall of Remembrance. And I actually gave that to my group to have for their records, and they really loved it. Yeah. That image was a really big hit. I think my issue with the art is that it doesn't all fit together. The style of it, like, none of it makes any sense together. Individual pieces are nice, but it all kind of comes together in a way that doesn't feel coherent, visually speaking. That said, it also gives the module a sort of DIY charm, which I can appreciate. So it wasn't distracting by any means, but it just didn't really add anything to it.
No, but I think overall it's quite, as we always like, a bit of nice, clean layout. It's well put together.
It is.
I think for the most part, except for a caveat later, I think it flows logically and nicely. No real complaints, but you're right. It doesn't, and I don't think it was intended to be a big, lavish production.
No,
it's just,
here
we go. This is what we need. We need some separators, and here's your. It says it's a short dungeon crawl.
The little village map is quite nice, actually. I really like
the
little village map. Is really nicely done. The art is good where it needs to be. The layout is generally terrific, and the order of things is usually done really well. In particular, the dungeon crawl part. The dungeon crawl part is very strong from an information presentation standpoint. But yeah. Okay, so this is a terrific little adventure. I really had a lot of fun with this. And the thing I liked most about it, well, there's several things, but one thing that really stands out, that's a highlight for me, is you can truly fit this in anywhere you need to in your campaign. The way it sets it up, you have this village with this problem, and there's a little mystery in the village that you have to kind of solve before you get to the dungeon crawl part. Classic setup. But it's not like a specific village. You're given this list of possible villages, and each of them is different enough to where you can make it work for wherever you're at. So if your characters are deep in the middle of a forest, you've got Pineacre. If you are doing ocean island hopping adventures, you've got a village that fits that a little better. So I really, really like that part of it. And it was a great fit for how I used it. It was the first adventure in my West Marches style campaign. I was looking for an adventure that's kind of easy to just put somewhere, right? And that doesn't have any particular ties to anything. I just wanted something I could drop in, and it didn't really have to necessarily connect to anything. And so it was really, really great for that. If you're looking for just a couple session long adventure to just drop into the middle of your campaign, this is a good one.
Yeah, that's good to know. I also liked the options for the villages. Because we often hear, oh, you can drop this easily into your campaign. You just have to rename all the characters, come up with different reasons for them to be doing everything they're doing, and so on. But in this case, yeah, it's quite self-contained. But I found all the descriptions, quite believable. They could connect to all kinds of a general fantasy setting.
Yeah,
of course, there are some things like a few specific names here and there, but they're all quite. I think because they're about it's about a foolish wizard. Mm-hmm. I think you can get away with more with wizard names that don't quite fit your campaign with any other kind of character. So that's fine.
And there is implied mythic lore, this like whole Gawain the White story. More on that, I think, when we get to the questions part. But it's situated in such an ancient history. I don't think it's going to really conflict with anything, right? Like my sense is that it's not going to be super disruptive because it's in the background, historically speaking.
True. And also, I also had the impression that when they present because you go into a tomb complex, and the way those burial practices are presented is as if they're peculiar to the local region. I think the impression I got was that it doesn't have to match anything that you might find elsewhere in the surrounding area, is the impression I got. But maybe I was just doing that.
Well, and the whole Gawain the White story is not super well explained in the module, and that's fine. And I think that actually makes it suitable for, you can kind of just do whatever you need to do with it in terms of making it fit your campaign. All of which is to say, I think a lot of adventures believe they can be dropped in anywhere, but you end up having to do a lot more, like you said, changing of NPC names or changing of religions or whatever to make it fit your campaign. I really feel like Ominous Crypt of the Blood Moss is truly airdroppable as far as adventures go. It really felt that way. Other little things. Oh, well, so speaking of the village, there's a couple of things there that were really fun in play. So there's this set piece where essentially the characters arrive, the village is clearly under some kind of duress, and there's not many people around. There's a lot of like tragedy. Something's gone on. And one of the first things they discover is a bunch of priests have a bunch of corpses piled up in a funerary pyre, and they're burning those corpses. That's a great setup. That's a terrific first thing to encounter when you walk into a village, right?
Yeah, that's great.
You're immediately in it. And then some of the bodies animate because they're zombies and begin attacking the priests, and now you're fighting flaming blood moth zombies. It's a terrific setup. It really sets the stakes for what's going on with this village and how the players get involved. Like, you just are involved. You're immediately in it. There's no turning away from.
Yes, there's no sort of, can you help us for a few hundred gold coins? It's like, no, here are some flaming zombies.
Right, so flaming zombies, you're in it. Yeah. There's also this mystery aspect to it, which is really fun too. And the mystery part of it, really, for us, it kind of played out like before that big funerary set piece, but I think you could do it afterwards too. But basically, as noted earlier, you locate the crypt because the river is carrying the blood moss through the village and through the area. And so the characters can kind of see that the river has been tinted kind of pinkish red. You can follow the river, and then that leads you to this little hill face, which has like a really thick red sludge around a certain part of it. So that's how you know where the entrance is. And so you have to find the entrance. It's a terrific little pre-dungeon mystery to solve. It worked great. It's not hard, not a difficult mystery, but it was really fun to play.
Well, if it was too difficult, the adventure would never happen.
Never
But
happen,
you're right. I guess it makes sense. It's like a trail to follow, and of course you're not going to rush into it because it's a river that's sickly red and bloody sludge. You're not going to just breeze right in. You are going to be cautious. So
you're going to be cautious.
Still, ominous.
It's really great environmental contextual clues about what's going on, and in play it was fantastic. What are some notes you have about things you liked here?
So I also like the funeral part. A quick note on the funerary thing just quickly is as well, I was starting to read through the intro. I was thinking, this is all well and good, but how are we going to get hooked into the scene? And then I got to that bit, I thought, okay,
now we get it. Yeah.
Got it. Now I get it. What else do I like? Yes, the getting into the dungeon itself. Good, clear dungeon writing on this one.
Yeah.
Nice sort of standardized dungeon write-ups, which has cross-references where needed to different things. So a nice balance between referring to nothing and referring to too many things, and that's good. And the description format has the basics, your first impressions in bold, and then in parentheses, more details upon closer inspection. This is good, and each of those is just a couple of words long. That's great. But the intro to each room actually is more wordy. It's italicized text, and it tells the GM, rather, the original purpose of each room. You know, the defleshing room was for scraping the corpses down to the bone, etc. And that's not necessarily player-facing content. And in fact, the players, I imagine, may never learn any of that stuff directly. But the GM has it in their head as they're explaining everything else. And that's great because, of course, sometimes there's something that's not in the description and the players will ask you, what's this or that? And if you know what the purpose of the room was, you can fill that in for yourself. Yep. It doesn't need to be written down for you in exhaustive detail. I think that's a great choice.
I am here to confirm that all of your instincts are correct. That is exactly how it worked out. It was very easy to run. I particularly like what you just said because it was true in my experience of a lot of the stuff doesn't get revealed to players, but the GM has it in their back pocket to like sort of inform how you run the scene and how you kind of think about the whole space. It's really, really good dungeon design, honestly. Like just really, really solid dungeon writing, like you said. A thing I liked about it, I like the way this dungeon does puzzles. Because the way it does puzzles is there are like maybe, in the whole adventure, there's maybe like 4 puzzle things you have to contend with, maybe. And what's great about it is, in all cases, the puzzles don't stop you from proceeding through the dungeon. If you don't figure out the little secret door puzzle in the beginning, which leads to the treasure vault, that's fine. You can still keep going. If you don't figure out how to destroy the blood moss core using acid in the defleshing chamber, that's okay too. You can still do the dungeon. It's just going to be harder, right? There's several instances where there's clearly a puzzle to be solved. There's something that needs to be kind of figured out here. But if you don't, it's okay. The only thing that's affected is the outcome of the dungeon, right? You still get to do the dungeon. It just depends on how well you do the dungeon and whether you, quote unquote, succeed or not. And I really like that. I thought that was great. When people, like, especially OSR purists, talk about the sort of sanctity of puzzle solving in the OSR, you know, which I think is not an idea that's as... I don't think there's as much valence there as it was, say, 10 years ago. But I kind of wish this is what they meant, right? Like, I wish this is what they meant. The puzzles are environmental challenges that affect how the dungeon plays out, but does not stop the dungeon from playing
right,
out.
They're not gates,
yeah,
but
they're
gates, sort of additional things. Yeah, that's good,
Yeah. It was really, really great. I just really appreciated how that was done. It was terrific. It just worked really well. I love a big old treasure hoard, and I've talked about this before.
You sure do.
I love a treasure hoard where it's line by line, all the different things you get. I don't know what it is, but my lizard brain just loves that. And once again, my players missed it. Very sad. The Hall of Remembrance, I've already mentioned the artwork. It's really great in play too. Because what it is, listeners, is if you do this like Nasty Village set piece, you find the dungeon, you're going through this crypt with really quite gross things going on. The blood moss is a pretty menacing environmental challenge because it's trying to infect you, and there's these zombies and these skeletons, and then you have this ossuary and this defleshing chamber. It's all grotesque. But then you get to the Hall of Remembrance, and it suddenly becomes mythic, because you're now in this sanctified space where there's all of these statues of Gawain the White and his various descendants. And we're never really told much about Gawain the White and his descendants.
No, but we don't need
to
know that much about them, do we? We can see what the monuments they've been given. And also, if I'm remembering correctly, almost everything in here is covered in the red moss, though, isn't it? And that's
It
this
is.
kind of
Right.
horrible sensation of invasion.
Yeah, it does. It's like the two things coming together. It's like this deep lore, this myth coming together with like this intruder, this blood moss intruder. It's a really, really great moment. And it takes what could be just a nasty, gnarly little dungeon crawl and just elevates it ever so much more to make it something more special. And I just really appreciated that. And I guess the last thing, the final boss is great. Fighting Ursodiol, who is the vessel of the blood moss core. Fantastic fight. Just really terrific fun.
Yeah, that's cool.
Really good one.
That wasn't obvious from just reading, but that's good to know. A thing I like is, I think he's still carrying, or rather the treasure I like most of all in this is the Crystal Tesseract. I love this because it's a classic bit of sort of cosmic psychedelic fantasy paraphernalia, like something that a Michael Moorcock hero might have.
Right, yeah.
And also, of course, it tries to make you gaze into it and thus commune with the cosmic dark, which would, in theory, could basically restart the whole adventure again if somebody messes up, which is great. So, that's really a nice bit of... It ties everything up at the end, doesn't it? Like, you've beaten the final boss, and here's what caused it all in the end. And what do we do with it now? I think that's really nice to present, not just to have it be, okay, adventure over, let's go home. There's this artifact remaining from the very beginning of the backstory.
Yeah, fantastic dungeon. I'd say this whole adventure you can finish in probably like 2-3 hour sessions. If you really push it, you can maybe finish it in a single longish session, and you're going to have a great time. It's very nicely, tightly done dungeon. Just a good time. Let's go to questions we had. I see you have a couple here.
I just had a couple. Okay, one is a vocab nitpick. That is, location 5 is called the Ossuary of Bones.
Yes.
And my question is, what other kind of ossuary is there?
There is no other type of ossuary. I also clocked that when I was reading it. I was like, oh, okay.
All right.
Fairly minor nitpick, I would say.
Yeah. A slightly larger one is, I will say, I found the intro section where it's sort of explaining the phenomena that are going on in the backstory a little bit hard to follow.
Agreed.
I think it's not in the best order to tell you the information, maybe. I also maybe wonder if it just should have been put at the back and start with the adventure.
I agree
in a way, and
completely.
just refer to. I don't know, but
yeah, it's an order of operations thing. I read through that. I had to read it like 2 or 3 times. That introductory, those like kind of introductory matter to wrap my head around what happened here.
What's it telling us? But then once I got into the adventure and it started referring to it, I understood it.
Yes.
So I think maybe I would say if you're reading this and you find yourself in the mire,
don't worry about
just
it.
skip ahead.
Just skip
start
ahead. Don't
reading.
worry about it. Yeah, because that was my experience too. Like when I finally got to reading the dungeon, I was like, oh, okay, it makes sense now. But the way it's placed in the beginning, it doesn't. You don't have enough information or context to make sense of some of the things that are in there. So, fantastic. Let's go to the
Chain lightning round.
of the blood moss. A blood-red mat of fungoid strands that clings to walls and ceilings. Constantly drips a thick and sticky slime the color of dried blood that stains everything. A single network of blood moss is formed of a larger core and various smaller nodes.
The teachings of the priests of Diers say that the flesh is an anchor to the mortal realm. To reach the great beyond, it must be cast off.
Of seeping gout, a sickness that the players can contract, the victim is racked by fever, coughing, and frequent bouts of dysentery. Apothecaries recommend the consumption of vile herbal remedies, blood pudding to balance the humors, and rubbing vile rendered fats into the afflicted areas both day and night.
Speaking of that final boss, the body of the unfortunate and horrifically disfigured mage. Red tendrils pulsate under the skin and push through tattered flesh, revealing the connection to the bloody threads that anchor it to this chamber.
The most famous of Gavaine's lineage stand here in the Hall of Remembrance. Once perfectly represented in pure white marble, they are now shrouded in bloody cordage and coated in the filth of the recent floods. Gavaine's spirit stalks this place, grieving for the injury that has been dealt to it. Let's go to the expert delve. Hey listeners, Jason here. I want to let you know about a brand new show. It's called the Gauntlet Podcast 2nd Edition, and it's an exploration and celebration of the indie tabletop RPG scene. The show is called Second Edition because it's a reboot of the old Gauntlet podcast, but also because in this new format, my co-host Wes and I are looking back at a classic indie RPG and then talking about what we would do if we were making a second edition of that game. As of this recording, we've already covered Dance of the Damned, The Sword, the Crown, and the Unspeakable Power, and Dogs in the Vineyard, and we have plenty more in the pipeline. Wes and I will also be chatting with folks both in and outside the Gauntlet community about different gaming-related topics, such as fandom in TTRPGs, the effects of the Satanic Panic in the early 80s and 90s, genre in games, and much more. The Gauntlet Podcast Second Edition is a Patreon exclusive. We've created this show for the ride or die Gauntlet fans who support everything we do on Patreon. There will be a new episode in the Patreon feed every single week, and you can get exclusive access by making a $2 or higher pledge. We're at patreon.com/gauntlet. Thanks. It's the Expert Delve. Now, Tom, back at the beginning of April, inspired in part by our recent conversation about West March's campaigns, I started my own West March's Style Trophy Gold campaign. It's called It's called the Company of Salt and Iron. Ominous Crypt was the first adventure we did. You know, I say West March's style because it doesn't follow the West March's format exactly, but it does have a lot.
Do we need the mandatory disclaimer?
Yes,
it is mandatory, right? Yes. Okay. Dear listeners, yes, we know that the original term West Marches referred to a very specific thing involving the GM basically being on call and so on. Do not email us. We're using the broader definition.
Do not write. Yes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do not write in. Thank you. West March's style, it has a lot of the same goals and outcomes of a, per se, West March's campaign. Anyway, I wanted to talk about that and kind of what we've been doing so far in the Company of Salt and Iron. Kind of get your thoughts on it. I mean, I'm doing a lot of things that I think are novel, maybe. I don't know. Maybe they're not. I don't know, but they feel novel. And it's also really interesting how trophy affects this a lot. And so I just want to talk about some of these things.
Yeah, and this is online, right, as well? So that's going to make a difference. Yeah.
Well, yeah, so let's go through the big picture stuff. So we're playing Trophy Gold. Everything is organized via the Gauntlet Discord, via a special channel that is only accessible to Gauntlet patrons. So basically, if you're a Gauntlet Patreon supporter, even at the lowest level, you can join this channel and play. We have a shared character keeper. It's a Google Sheet that we've designed that basically has all of the character information. So all the characters. So currently there are 40 different company members in there. And this is great because the Gauntlet has used character keepers for many years. But this is terrific in particular for this because there's like 40 different characters and you can go in and see every character in real time. You can see exactly what treasure they have, how much ruin they have, whatever conditions they've acquired. You can see every single character at any given time. And that open information makes this really, really doable. And I think it solves a problem that you might have in a more traditional technology setup. The gameplay is divided into delves and camp activities. Delves are essentially, I've divided up the dungeon we're doing into 4 or 5 parts, or maybe the delve is like something that's back at camp adventure, some kind of danger the camp has to deal with or the company has to deal with. I announce them, or my co-GM now, Alex, will announce them about an hour before they start. The announcement has its own thread in Discord. It includes the start time, the duration, the burdens required. Trophy characters have a burdens score, and so you have to acquire so much gold on the delve before you go back to camp. Mm-hmm. And then the number of treasure hunters who can join. The duration can range between 20 minutes to 3 hours. That's the range of stuff we're doing. So sometimes it's a 20-minute, sometimes it's a 30-minute, sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's 2 hours. But there's a variety of times these delves can last. And the assumption, if you play, is that you're going to give me 10 to 15 minutes at the end if we need it. So there's like a little bit of flex time built in too. Because you never know where you're going to quite stop in the adventure. You know, you might need that extra 10 minutes to finish something up. The burden score for the characters can range from 0 to 3. So the way I've been doing that is for just a short, like 20-minute delve, I usually make the burden 0 because there's not really enough time to find treasure necessarily. There's time to do some activity, but not necessarily to find like a lot of treasure. And so I'll set the burdens to 0. But for the longer ones, it'll be 1, 2, or 3 burdens. And 5 minutes before we start, I post the Zoom link. Anyone who can play can join up to the maximum number of players, and then we just immediately start. With a couple of caveats, which I'll talk about later, the delves are really focused on action and dungeon crawling. all of the character development and the inter-party drama, the character development, all the backstory stuff, that all takes place back at camp in the Discord and in the company book. When we're on the Zoom call, we're just doing adventure. So we start and I immediately say, here you are, you're at the entrance to the dungeon, what do you do?
Yeah, you're doing the thing. Yeah.
We just immediately dive in. And we do have this company book. That's a big part of it as well. Players are responsible for maintaining the company book, which is where everything is tracked. Rumors and information is shared. Any gold expenditures are noted in a little ledger. Various character profiles and services are listed. Important documents like map fragments are stored there, that kind of thing. And then the last thing I'll say before we give you a chance to respond, the last thing I'll say is, importantly, and I think this was the real keystone idea that unlocked this for me, the company's camp is assumed to always be parked near the adventuring location. And what that does is it makes it so you can divide the dungeon up into pieces. And so in the case of Ominous Crypt of the Blood Moss, the first delve was an hour-long delve that was just scouting out the village.
Right,
the company's parked nearby. A few treasure hunters...
like a caravan or something traveling around.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
A few treasure hunters go out to make contact with the village. They find out what's going on. They do the little funerary pyre set piece. They figure out the mystery. And then that's the end of their delve. They've kind of set up the next group who will then go into the dungeon. And maybe the next group, because Trophy operates on a set goal concept, you can make the set goal, get access to this part of the dungeon. And so that next group plays a little bit of the dungeon, opens up that next part, and then they're able to go back to the camp, and then the next group keeps going. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're able to have lots of different people participating. And so at a high level, that's how it works. It's very much designed for maximum participation, essentially, right? How do we get as many people as possible to be able to just play for a little bit and have fun and to engage with it in some sense? So any thoughts at a high level?
Well, I don't know about high level. I think first of all, this sounds pretty good. I like the idea of the roving caravan. It's something that I think I was recently planning to do a sort of a roving caravan game, but then got sidetracked by doing another one where you're on a ship, which is basically the same thing in some ways. But, but yeah, you're right. Having that base close by, that's a great way to have essentially a pool of characters. You don't have to define how many there are exactly.
Nope.
It's just
just a bunch of people.
Just assume it's a believable amount, and that's great. But no, I think let me go back from the beginning. I think to keep track of what we're looking at. First of all, let's talk character keepers. I'm assuming this is the sort of thing where the classic way to do it was to have a couple of columns on a Google Sheet, a spreadsheet, basically, that's a mini character sheet, and you go down as many rows as you need because that's infinite, and you scroll across to see all the names, right?
Yeah.
That's good. And then for the company book, is that a different tab in the same file, or do you keep it somewhere else?
Right, so good questions. So the character keeper in this case, it is this Google Sheet divided up into columns. Each column is a individual character. It's just so that you don't have a lot of horizontal scrolling.
Yep.
There are basically 10 characters per tab. So each tab has 10 characters on it. So whenever you join the delve, I usually ask the players, what tab is your character on, so that I can know where to go find their character information. Happily, I haven't really needed to look at the characters too much as the GM, because the way I'm running this in the way where it's my job is strictly to deliver dungeon. That's kind of it.
Yes.
All the bookkeeping, they're doing that themselves. And they're very good at policing each other, too.
Exactly. And this is one reason I think that the book is such a good idea. I had a similar thing when I was doing Castle White Rock. We had the dungeon journal. People would write down stuff they'd encountered and passwords and things. And it's because, once you're doing West Marches, even if it's not that many players, if they can have more than one character, to be honest, once you get above about 5 people, you will drive yourself insane trying to keep track of even the items they found. It is up to them to remember what magic items they found. I always tell them what the magic items do as soon as they get them, even if they don't know in character yet, because even if I'm keeping notes, I cannot keep track of all that stuff, especially once you do what we're foolishly doing, I'm assuming, and not just using one mega dungeon, but a collection of different adventures. Because the number of times someone goes, what did that glowing spear do that I collected 3 months ago? And I'll go, which dungeon was that in? Because I don't have it on me. And
we've gotten in the habit where as soon as a delve is done, the players immediately go into Discord and they do all the housekeeping. All the housekeeping and record keeping.
Discord is great for this as well.
Yeah. So you've got the character keeper. There's tabs for the characters. There's also tabs for the rules of the game and that kind of thing. There's also a bestiary. And here's a little side note about Trophy. So in Trophy Gold, you have this concept of the bestiary. You are not meant to name monsters as you present them to players. You just describe the monsters, and the players are meant to track the monster information. This was the creature we encountered. They give the monsters names that they know it by, and they might be able to discover its weakness, and they also note anything that is valuable that can be harvested from that monster. Now, in a normal Trophy Gold campaign, the bestiary actually doesn't come up that much, because once you're done with an incursion, you don't really have
you're done.
you don't have any reason to ever see that monster again. But in this setup, the bestiary is critical, because the dungeon might be 5 different groups that have to get through it. And so that first group, when they encounter a monster and they make a note of it in the bestiary, the other groups are incentivized to figure out the weakness of the monster and to use that information so that when they go in, they have an easier time with it. And so we are like full on bestiary mode with this, and it's great. It's really terrific. So you have you got the character keeper. The bestiary is also part of the character keeper. And then we have a Google Doc that is the company book. I don't maintain the Google Doc. Okay. That's maintained by one of the participants. But basically, the Google Doc is cool because they've set it up to where a lot of the information that gets put into the character keeper gets automatically dropped into the company book as well. So there's like anytime you add something to the bestiary, it gets put in the appropriate place in the company book.
Smart.
They've done it really smart with technology. This is why it's good to let the players do it, because I have no interest in figuring that out myself. This Google Doc, it's divided up into chapters, and it's got all kinds of different things. Like there's like a section with just like little bits of lore and ephemera. There's a little ledger of gold expenditures back at camp just to keep everybody honest. There's camp services profiles, more on that in a minute. There's different projects that the camp is working on. It's just all the information you need. Rumors, map fragments. There's just places for all of it. And it's working really, really great because basically whenever a group goes onto a delve, they might have picked up map fragments for future dungeons that they've gotten in some way. And so they go and check and they're like, oh, I think we're doing this dungeon that this map fragment is part of. So now I have this information. Right? And so you're incentivized to keep track of what's happening in the company book, because we've had many instances where if you didn't know what was in the company book, you would have had a much harder time of it in the adventure. And so that's really cool. Same thing with rumors and things like that. Rumors like, oh, this particular monster can be destroyed if you do this thing.
Because it's a way to kind of engage in the game, even if you don't make it into a given session as well, which is great.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, and this is especially, it's a strength of online games, but this is worthwhile for face-to-face West Marches games as well. I think it keeps the whole group, even if 2 particular players haven't seen each other for like 2 months because they've just not happened to overlap, they're still in touch with one another and so on. Speaking of which, by the way, I think the announcement an hour ahead of time and all that kind of thing, you've not invented this, but you have sort of somehow revived it was very big in the Google Plus era, flail snails and similar ad hoc OSR gaming things where you could bring in basically, I'm going to run this in an hour.
Yeah.
Anyone who wants to bring a character in, we're doing it. But this, of course, is in one fixed setting, so you've kind of taken that. Essentially, it was like a multiverse dimension hopping thing, because you would just bring your PC from any game.
From any game.
Whereas this is like they actually just continue to exist in the Iron and Salt, or
the
Salt
company
and
of Salt and Iron. Yes. Yeah.
There we go, in that universe. So that's pretty.
Salt and
nice,
Iron is blood. That's the company motto.
That's the thing. Yeah.
So the company book is pretty terrific for just managing all this like ephemera and all this information. And a lot of the players even gotten to the point of where they'll go in their own Discord channel and have conversations as characters.
Yes.
And then they'll just transfer that conversation to the company book. They'll be like, here's a conversation between these characters. And that stuff's great. It has no bearing on what I'm doing. I don't have the ability to keep track of all of it, and I don't. I'm just here to run the dungeon, and that's what I do.
Yeah.
And, it's
and like you say, and you've mentioned you're just focusing on the action when you're doing the delves, and that's the other good thing about having a back channel that everyone's on, again, face-to-face or online, is that you then don't have to worry about how much screen time you need to give to character interactions, because your answer is basically none.
That's exactly right. And they all know that now. Like in the beginning, I had to kind of impress it upon them, but now they all kind of know when we're on the delve, when we're on the Zoom call, it's finding treasure, it's doing the dungeon. We're not here to be emotional or angsty or whatever, right? We're not doing that. We do that back at Discord. Okay, so I do want to talk about some more specific things that I've done that I think are maybe not unique, but I think they're worth talking about. The first is, I've already hinted at it, but I was really, really focused on easy onboarding here. I have designed, and indeed I continue to design as we play, every part of this for ease and maximum participation. And part of that is I did a video that's on my YouTube channel that covers the basics. Like, how does this work? What are the rules? Here's how character creation goes. Here's the cats, concept, aim, tone, subject matter. Here's the safety tools and how we're going to use them. This was a huge win because basically what it means is anybody who wants to play, they just watch that video. It's like 20 minutes long. They watch me going through all the basic rules of it.
Yeah.
And then they're immediately ready to go play. And I don't have to do that in the delve. And it's amazing how much more adventuring you can get done when you don't have to spend any time doing introductory matter.
That's great. Yeah, because I'd got my explaining Dungeon Crawl Classics intro down to like I would say about 20 to 30 seconds. Unless they had questions. But yeah, if I had a thing where even before they show up,
like, go watch this.
You know, when they first message you, go watch this if you want to. But if you didn't bother, then I'll tell you when you arrive. That would be great.
Well, no, for this you must. Like, you're not allowed to participate unless you watch this video. And you need to because it has like character creation notes in it. I've designed it for easy onboarding, and the company book and stuff is part of that too. What we've discovered so far is you don't even have to know what's been going on to play. Because members of the company will have asynchronous information, right? Like, they won't all know everything. You might know some things and you can learn things. And if you want to spend some time in the company book, you can certainly learn things. But you can also just show up to the delve and play a little bit and contribute. And I think that's pretty great. The other thing I want to talk about, this is a trophy thing, but this format is Trophy's secret superpower, and I didn't even know until we started doing it. And every player, either on Discord or in chatter with people, every player, almost to a person, has said some version of this. Trophy was made for this. And the reason why is because in Trophy, you can do a 20-minute session and do something very satisfying with stakes and danger and have a satisfying moment, and you're in and out in 20 minutes. In a more traditional game, you probably couldn't even do a single combat in 20 minutes. But in Trophy, you can do a series of combats. You can do a couple of set-piece encounters. You can do a lot because of the way the dice cover a lot more fiction in Trophy. So that's been really, really satisfying. It also makes the bookkeeping very easy because it's not a super mechanically dense game. And another thing about Trophy that I've always known, but is much more apparent, Trophy, and here I mean Trophy Gold, which is much more apparent when you're in this format, is it's really flexible and allows you to make a lot of bespoke rules. So you can take the core of the rules and drift them and play around with them to make very bespoke custom rules for whatever camp activity or whatever adventuring activity you have in mind. And I'm just not sure you could do that with the same amount of ease in a traditional role-playing game. I mean, you could, but Trophy makes it super simple.
I mean, are you keeping your own keep-aside version of the company book for this? Because what I used to do when running World of Dungeons for ages was I would sort of, if I liked one that I came up with, I would keep it in a Google Doc and then occasionally like go, how did I do that shit? Thing again? And I'd scroll back and find it. And then
I have my notes that I make, but they're not organized in any particular
not formalized.
way. Yeah, not super formal. But I mean, I can do a lot of this just like improv, you know, I'm pretty good at that. I've had a lot of experience with the system. You can kind of make little bespoke rules, and that's at least partially informed by the fact that running Trophy Gold is kind of like that. Especially when you're adapting a module, you have to make a lot of on-the-fly GM calls about how it works in Trophy Gold.
Sure, yeah.
And Trophy Gold's pretty good at, there's a lot of flexibility there, right? It's really hard to get wrong. You're kind of like in that mode already. So yeah, Trophy has been a real pleasure in this regard. Another thing I've been doing is I've been following the rules of Trophy Gold really strictly. Because in the past, I've always been a little loosey-goosey with the rules, and that's okay. The game can handle it, but I haven't always like followed the die roll procedures exactly as they're written, you know? But in this case, I've been following the procedures exactly as written and doing narrative control exactly as written. And I have to say, it works great. As it turns out, Jesse Ross knew what he was doing when he designed the game. Yeah. And so just a little note that there's something to be said about following the rules that are there really, really closely.
Yeah, that is something I found as well when running, especially with the rotating cast you get in a West Marches game. I found it is valuable to, essentially when you get stuck, spend the time and look it up, you know, or just make sure you are consistent. And
you want to be consistent,
more confident in yourself, yeah. And you don't have to remember something you did before. And
it introduces a certain level of dependability, consistency, keeps you honest as a GM, which I think is great.
Absolutely,
you know? Okay, another thing I've done with this campaign is I'm doing what's called campaign events. So they're doing the delves. They're going on adventures. We've been playing for a month and a half, and we've already finished 4 modules. But we're also doing the campaign event. And so the campaign event, the way that works is when they're going on a delve, when they come back from the delve, they have to pay a certain amount of their treasure in burdens. So they always have to give up some of their treasure to the company.
And this just represents like upkeep and things
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that,
exactly.
basically.
Yeah, it's like kind of the price of playing, essentially. They have to pay their burdens. But what I do is I take the money collected from burdens and I put it into this campaign event tracker. And so the players all know our first campaign event was called the Profundal Zone. It triggered whenever we collected 50 gold worth of burdens. And here gold is capital G gold. It's a term of art in the game. It's an abstraction of money. But when we collected 50 gold, then that triggers the campaign event. And we're in the middle of that campaign event right now. It's actually Deep Carbon Observatory, the remastered one. But basically, what's great about that is it creates this thing that the players you're always kind of working on. So our next campaign event is going to be triggered whenever we collect 100 gold. That's going to be a while, but it's fun to know it's there. And they're all like kind of invested in it. And what's fun about tracking the campaign event is you can use that as it's both your carrot and your stick. Because if something happens, like the camp gets ambushed by a monster or some kind of sickness overtakes the camp or something like that, like the blood moss, if the players don't respond to it properly or if they fail, you can say, oh, we've had a setback in camp. And so then you just subtract from the campaign event to represent the company being set back a little bit. Yeah.
See.
There's like this meta thing that you get to play around with the campaign event. But it's also just a nice way of gating big moments. Yeah, we're just doing like little dungeon crawls.
Give some
It's
shape.
big moment.
Yeah, it's not just happening over and over again. Yeah, and that's and also what it means is you can have interesting discoveries when you've been away. I suppose actually one of the weaknesses of having the character keeper open to everyone is that you can see exactly what's happening with everyone.
Yeah.
Although I guess if you don't want to know, just don't read it.
Yeah.
But one of the good things about West Marches is sometimes someone will go away for a few weeks. They come back and they're like, "Wait, what happened to the Minotaur friend that we picked up in the dungeon?" And then and learning about what's happened and I think having big events occurring is good. Another fun thing I like to do is to give out a sort of meta little chart which I called the danger meter, which had various bars on it with things like one had a symbol of a skull, one had a scary looking plant. But I never really told them what they represented, just that something bad was going to happen.
That's good. Yeah.
And then they'd gradually figure out. Obviously the plants turned out to be the weird pod people thing, and they had to deal with that. And that can be fun as well, to go a little bit to say that there is this structure. You don't have to explain it completely, just to make everyone aware there is this structure going on in the background.
Yeah.
And something's going to happen. Yeah, it's good.
Well, I've also taken this campaign event idea and I've applied it to something that's really particular to Trophy Gold. So in Trophy Gold, the characters all have a drive, and they accomplish their drive whenever they stash 50 gold, again, capital G gold, 50 gold into their hoard. Money stashed in hoard can never be touched again. It's forever gone. It can't be used for expenditures. It's just there. And it's an abstraction of your character getting closer to their ultimate goal as their character, right? Their big drive. It hasn't happened yet because we haven't been playing long enough. But what I'm going to do is if a character manages to store all 50 gold and achieve their drive, that will trigger another campaign event. So basically we'll just set up that drive. We'll do a little delve that's all about that drive. So it's all designed basically to like I'm taking the part of Trophy Gold where you kind of have to just like give up your money and kind of funneling it back into like bigger campaign goals. And it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's cool.
Now, I talked about the delves, and generally speaking, they are just dungeon crawl. But I've also created some unusual delve types, and I'm continuing to innovate on those for the campaign. But here's the few that we've done so far. I've done a type of delve that is a one-man watch. So the delve is one treasure hunter, and it's the character who's on watch at a particular period. And basically, it's like a 20-minute delve, and it's just a chance to see this one character in action. We learn a little bit more about them, what they do on watch, how they exist. And then there's usually a little encounter that they have to kind of contend with. And if that goes poorly, i.e. their watch fails, then it has a big implication for the whole company. I actually managed to get through an entire issue of Vacant Ritual Assembly, which is an old OSR magazine.
That's very nice.
Yeah, I managed to get through a whole issue of Vacant Ritual Assembly just by doing these little one-man watches, because basically it was just like a little series of set pieces, and it was really great. So we've done the one-man watch. We've done a delve several times that are basically, I would call, around the campfire. So we have up to 8 treasure hunters on the call. And the idea is you don't normally get to talk much about your character on the Zoom calls, their motivations and their backstory. But around the campfire, you do. So here, you are tasked with telling a story connected to your drive. So you either tell a legend or you tell a story that connects you personally to your drive, like why you do this thing, like why you're here at the company. Everybody tells their story, and then we vote on the story we like best. And whoever tells the best story gets to put some gold in their hoard to get them closer to reaching their drive, because the company holds them in higher regard now, and so they'll have an easier chance of meeting their drive. The very first one I did, after they all told their story, I revealed that one of them was supposed to be on watch this whole time and then had a monster attack. So they also had to do a fight at the end. But we were able to tell 8 personal stories and do a whole fight in 30 minutes, right? Or maybe 40 minutes. Like, it was pretty, really tight, but it worked great. I've done a special type of delve that I call blood on a blank. So the first one was blood on a red rock, i.e. red moss covered rock. This is essentially a sequence of blood sport fights, basically. So you have 2 treasure hunters facing off against 3 different monsters, and each time they have a chance to back out and collect the money they've earned.
Oh, that's fun.
If they keep going, they can earn even more money. And if they get to the 4th round, they are given the option of fighting each other. And if they fight each other, the winner gets all the gold and a special magic item that's up for grabs. So far, no one has taken up that 4th round. They all stop after defeating the 3 monsters, but someday someone's going to.
One day.
They're going to fight each other. That's a lot of fun. I've done another type called the cleaving, which is essentially a magical duel. We have 2 treasure hunters, and they are doing rituals against each other. Trophy Gold has this really fantastic contest role that handles conflicts between characters, and so we do a contest role to show these characters doing magic to each other to try to win the contest, and there's usually like a really cool prize available. And I always set those magical duels in a place in a dungeon we've recently done. So if there was like this grotto they explored, or if there was this grand dining hall in a crumbling castle, that will be the backdrop for the cleaving. Just
Right.
create some flavor. And that's a lot of fun. And then we've done ambushes. That's another special delve. I'll announce the ambush in Discord. I'll say, oh, the camp is being attacked by blood moss zombies. Yeah, the camp is being attacked. And if you don't show up, this is what's going to happen. And so then people show up and they have to fend off the various monsters that attack the camp. And I'm coming up with new things all the time. Like, I've got so many ideas for like different ways of letting the characters do things, show off their character, have some adventuring fun. Maybe you can't do a full 2-hour or 3-hour delve in the dungeon, but you might be able to do a 20-minute watch.
Well, yeah, I think that's the beauty of this sort of flexibility of the time slots being just what you decide, right?
Yeah.
That's good. And it means you don't need to try and stretch things or compress things. You just let them.
Yeah.
Maybe you're never going to guess exactly right how long it's going to need, but hey, that's what the 15 minutes bonus time is for.
Yeah, exactly. It's working great. And the comment I've gotten from a lot of people is, I like that I can just participate at whatever level I can do. Maybe I can't do the full thing, but I can do this little 20-minute thing. Or maybe I can't do a delve at all, but you know what I can do? I can participate in the camp projects and services, and that's the next thing I want to talk about. So, projects and camp activities. Early on, I came up with this concept of the project. So after they finished Ominous Crypt of the Blood Moss, we now have this town of Pineacre, which is this logging town. All of its trees are infected by this blood moss. And so what I did was I set up a project where the company will help Pineacre clear the blood moss and get their logging operation going again in exchange for payment. And in this case, in exchange for a share of their logging operation. And so what the project was I present it in Discord, and then that information gets transferred over to the company book. And what it is I say what the problem is. In the case of Pineacre, it was, well, a lot of people are dead because of the infection, so we don't have anybody to cut the trees down. We have the actual infection itself. Our trade routes are all messed up because of this. Like, here are the problems. And now, for you to do this project, players, you have to come up with a plan that incorporates the skills and rituals of X number of characters, and you have to give me X numbers of pieces of equipment. And whatever you give up, like however you create the project, it must answer all the problems I've identified. And in the case of the Pineacre project, successfully completing it gave every character in the company book a Pineacre logging shares. And on the first of the month, I notify everybody that they receive 1 gold for their Pineacre logging shares. And so that's a fun thing. But there have been projects that are smaller scale. Like a bunch of characters actually got infected by the blood moss. And so we did a project to heal the blood moss. Like, okay, here's the problem with the blood moss. So they came up with a plan, like, all the various medical things they're going to do and how they're going to help the victims and all this stuff. We've had projects related to curses, like lifting a curse. We've had projects associated with any little side quest or problem in a module is great for a project. You don't have to role play that necessarily. You can kind of projectize it.
Yeah, it ticks along in the background.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's been a lot of fun, the projects aspect. And then finally, we have camp services. So this is a newer thing that we're doing, but I'm into it. The idea with camp services is the players can present to me a proposal where they're using their character's skills and equipment and rituals. They can provide services to the camp. So normally in Trophy, you have to spend gold to heal and you have to spend gold to buy equipment. But in the Company of Salt and Iron, you can spend gold with a specific treasure hunter to get a specific type of healing. Or you can spend gold with a specific treasure hunter to get a specific bundle of equipment that's themed to their character. Or you can come up with special services. And here the players are invited to essentially create new rules for the game. So they come up with a service like I can do a star chart for your character. For 1 gold, I'll create a star chart, and then that star chart can be used on the delve to get an extra die roll whenever you XYZ. It's that kind of thing. Or I can create this special little magic item for you that does this. It's a really cool way of getting players involved in the bespoke rules and homebrewing aspect of Trophy Gold.
Yeah. And again, in a way that maybe, even if they can't make the delve sessions, they can definitely do this. And this has reminded me, actually, something I meant to say about the Blood Moss Adventures. I think the Blood Moss itself is a very interesting thing, and it's very suitable for one of the joys of West March's games, which is that either the GM or the players bringing back stuff from previous adventures. So I can definitely see in a run-through of Blood Moss, some enterprising player finding a way to keep a sample alive, even though the adventure sort of says you can't do that. Yep. Or indeed the GM just saying, oh no, there's some scary red moss in the area. And even quite throwaway things, just a sort of something from the treasure list that doesn't stand out particularly. That can come back like months later because a player makes it into a thing. And your back channel, your camp or shipboard activities, that's the ideal venue for that. Yep. It was always, for example, I don't know if you've played Mutant Year Zero, but that's one of the best bits of that game. Is it's sort of a hex crawly post-apocalyptic thing most of the time. Yeah. But back at the camp or the Ark, because it's like their haven, the players will decide what construction projects they're going to do. It becomes like a little real-time strategy game, and it gets you invested in it. And then the next time you run a delve, you're not just exploring a goblin cave, you're exploring a goblin cave in order to forward this thing that you've been thinking about for 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, exactly.
And that's what's great about it.
And you're keeping an eye out for things, right? You're like, oh, this thing that in any other context might just be a one-off treasure or a thing I don't care about. This might be a thing I can use for a project.
Oh, we could use this for
we could use this for something, right? So that's been really cool. And also, like you said a second ago, I have players in the company right now who almost never get to join a delve. They just don't. But they're still collecting gold.
Do you find that's a bit of a problem for some people? They just every time they're on, like the session that you're doing is too long or something like that. Is that just some people are going to be unlucky, I guess?
Yeah, there's some people who just can't do it. I've tried to have a variety of time zones and stuff, but there's some people who just can't do it, or maybe they just want to engage in this way. But basically, they're still collecting gold because they happen to have a really critical skill, or they've managed to set up a very lucrative camp service. That's been a lot of fun. I think we've got one character who's only been on 1 delve, but because his skills are all surgery-based skills, he's collected like 10 gold in his hoard, right? So nice. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's been great. I do have a couple of questions and thoughts about the future, things that I'm thinking about that are in the back of my mind that I want to work on. First is I do want to make sure I'm keeping it dangerous. One thing I've noticed about the format is it's maybe not dangerous enough. I've only killed 2 characters so far, and that does not feel like enough for me. That is not a satisfying
number. How many sessions have you done?
I don't know the number of sessions. We've been playing for a month and a half pretty steadily. And
yeah, you should definitely have killed more than 2 by now. Yeah.
We should have killed more than 2, I feel like. So I got to get some more deaths in there. And I think the reason why is because depending on the length of the delve, as long as you have some armor, you can kind of survive pretty easily. It's something I'm thinking about. I'm trying to think about like how to increase the lethality. I will say though that the players are being incredibly strategic. So like they're being so strategic, and so fair play.
Yeah. Maybe it's not a problem
It's
after
maybe not
all,
an
and then
issue,
one day it's going to go horribly wrong.
Yeah.
But it won't be your fault. So.
I do want to keep thinking about ways of making it so new folks can join without having to know all the backstory and deep lore. If this keeps going for another year, a year from now, I don't want people to be put off because they feel like they can't catch up to everything. So I'm always thinking about a newness. It's okay if you jump in right now. You don't have to know everything that came before. Yeah. And so that's something I'm keeping in the back of my mind. And just generally increasing the number of people participating. We have 40 characters, but I would say of the number of people who actually do the Zoom call delves, it's probably maybe 15 people. I would like to increase that. A big part of that will just be more GMs running things. Like Alex has started to run delves now, which has helped. That might just naturally grow over time. We've only been at it for a month and a half, and I feel like we're doing pretty well as far as that goes. But I am thinking about how do we just get more people involved. So that's something that's always kind of in the back of my mind. I might as well just say, if you're listening to this and you want to be involved, it's not hard.
You could be.
You could be. It's a $2 or higher pledge on the Gauntlet Patreon. It gets you access to that channel, and you can watch the video, make a character, and start getting involved. So you can do it. But I'm having a lot of fun with it. Yeah, this is some of the most fun I've had playing role-playing games in years, and
it's good, isn't it? Right, and I think it's for the GMs especially. I think what's great about it is it's a kind of a big, complex world, isn't it? But it's not that complex for you because you're sharing a lot of the responsibilities, and especially if once you have more than one GM, you've got a kind of a support network. You can chat to each other for ideas and stuff, and that's really good. It's not all on. Right. You're not doing the tortured creative artist, although I think we will love a bit of that sometimes, but you don't always want to do it. Yeah. This loosely defined West Marches approach, this sort of dispersed responsibility is really great for so many reasons. And yeah, I think it sounds great what you've got going. And especially I think I admire the combination of organizational things you've used, which is sounds boring, but it actually allows you to do a lot more things than would otherwise be possible. Yeah.
Fantastic. Let's go to companion adventures. Okay, it's the companion adventures. We both have a TV recommendation here. What is yours?
It's a classic one. I just watched it again today to double check. It's not that related to Blood Moss. But you know what? It's got moss in the title and I liked it. It's episode 6 of the TV show Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, The Creeping Moss from the Shores of Shoggoth. This is the one where Dr. Sanchez falls in love with a patient who's slowly turning into a broccoli from space. And there's a debate about whether or not she needs to be boiled to stop the alien invasion from spreading. So go check that out. It is on YouTube. Deadly serious, as I'm sure you can tell.
I don't know what it says about me that the comedian who does Garth Marenghi, that the really particular British horror writers he's making fun of are like my favorite writers. Like, I don't know what it says about me, but I love those writers, right? They're so great. I don't know. Anyway, my TV recommendation is season 2 of The Last of Us. Last of Us, great show in general, but in particular, in season 2, they focus a lot more on the actual fungus infection. It's fungus in this case, not moss. But in season 1, I felt like the infection was a afterthought or was in the background. You didn't really get it too much. But here there's lots of infected scenes. And so if you just want like some cool inspiration for how to handle blood moss zombies and infected humans, it's a good one. Mm-hmm. All right, what do we got for reading here?
Reading, I've got a short... Is it a short story? I seem to recall it's quite a long short story, but another tale of cosmic infectious spreading things across a rural community. H.P. Lovecraft's The Colour Out of Space. Now, it is a more controversial take than it should be to say that most Lovecraft writing is not very good.
It is not.
But this is one of his quite good ones, I would say. And I think it's worth having a read if you want to have the slightly less... It's still pretty gonzo and pulpy as alien invasions go, but it's very interesting the way that it's handled in the story. The idea of this weird alien colour that no one can quite define, seeping through the area and the community. So yeah, give it a go. It's on the internet because it's old, so it's free. Mm-hmm. You can find it.
I have a book recommendation, which is The Queen by Nick Cutter. It's a horror novel, kind of a body horror novel that is kind of one part Mean Girls and which I've never seen, and one part.
What? Oh, wait, hang on.
I know. We've talked about this. One part Mean Girls and one part alien invasion horror, body horror. Like, I don't know, it's great. Basically, it's this story of this group of teenagers who get involved in this insect infestation. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it, but the reason why I'm recommending it though is because it's another great, really gnarly depiction of people being taken over by something and kind of made zombie-like. So it's just a good read too. Nick Cutter's are really fantastic. If you like body horror, Nick Cutter's terrific. So, and I think that's all I've got, apart from just like maybe a shout out to my YouTube channel. If you want to go watch a Company of Salt and Iron videos, you don't have all the right context necessarily. Like watching them in order, a lot of it won't make sense because you're not getting all the Discord stuff, the camp stuff, but it's maybe a good watch just to see how I'm doing it and how I'm running it. So, listeners, that is our show for today. Fear of a Black Dragon is a production of The Gauntlet. You can find us on gauntlet-rpg.com or brindlewoodbay.com. We're on Blue Sky at Gauntlet RPG, and our Patreon is patreon.com/gauntlet. Tom, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks to our ominous editor, Rich Rogers, and thank you, listeners, for listening. Take care.
Take care. That was simultaneously the worst and best one.
Worst and best one,
That's
right?
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.